Talk radio for the Generation X audience and beyond who have conservative values. Now, here's the host of Conservatives Talk, Donald Thornton.
Good afternoon, DFW, the Metroplex, and on the word, FM.com, the whole wide world. Welcome to Conservatives Talk, where you are listening to talk radio of the future today, where we discuss race, religion, politics, and all the current events of the day. Hope you've had a great Sunday. Let's dive into it. If you want to get involved in the conversation, the number is 800-949-5973. We're on Twitter right now. If you want to tweet me your comment or your question, we'll try to get it on the air. We're also on Facebook as well. Twitter.com/Conservatives Talk is our Twitter mark, and info@Conservatives Talk if you want to find out more about the show. It's info@Conservatives Talk. That's XSERVATIVES Talk.com. Welcome to the show. Like I said, if you're listening for the first time, when we discuss race, religion, politics, and all the current events of the day, and what we tried to do here is not only talk about the issues, but to try to solve the problems or try to find out resolutions to those issues. Unlike any other talk show out there, we're interested in fixing the problem, not just bringing attention to the problem. One of the things I want to talk about today, obviously, because the contraception debate is in the news again, obviously with the Catholic Church and the Obama administration attempting to make the Catholic Church affiliates, university schools, and of that sort pay for abortion services. I shouldn't say abortion services, but contraceptive services for all women for free. We know he came out earlier last week and basically changed it up and said that, well, now the Catholic churches won't have to do it, but insurance companies will pay for it. Well, we all know. I think sometimes the president thinks we're stupid about public policy or something. I don't understand that. He knows. Number one, it's kind of frightening when you think about the fact that the president of the United States gets up and tells private businesses that now you're going to pay for something. That in itself should alarm us, because I don't think that's ever happened before in history, that a president can stand up and tell businesses, this is what you're going to do. You're going to pay for this, or you're going to give this for free, which we all know is not for free. But that cost is going to be passed on to other customers in the form of higher deductibles and things of that sort, higher price for health care. So it's not free. I mean, Democrats like to pass around this word free. Adults can stay on their children's health care till they're 26 for free. That's not free. Parents have to pay for that. But anyway, don't let me get off on that. But contraception is back in the news. I find it funny also that they were telling us just a few months ago that social issues are on the back burner. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Social issues are on the forefront of this election, or in the forefront of this election year. But I want to talk about locally here. Those of you who didn't know that obviously at the beginning of a few months ago, the Texas legislature passed an abortion law here that mandated that women who are getting an abortion would, number one, have to wait 24 hours. Number two, doctors would have to now give them a chance to hear their heartbeat and view the image, or have a sonogram. Well, that caused a lot of consternation. A lot of pro-choice groups are upset. Even went to the court of law. Federal judge held it up for a bit, but the federal ruling came down and said, well, yeah, you can go ahead and keep those stipulations as a part of that abortion law. So it's been in effect for a few weeks now, and we've got, according to, I was reading an article in CBSDFW.com where some doctors and women are upset about this issue. And I think it's sad. I think it's a sad state of affairs in our nation. Now, and again, if you disagree, I want to hear from you. 800-949-5973. That there are people who are saying, we don't want a sonogram. We don't want to hear about the child. We don't want to hear about this living being within us. We just want to come and abort it. Again, this was an article called Texas Law Sparks Anger and Resignation. According to one doctor, Dr. Curtis Boyd, he's a medical director at Southwest Women's Surgery Center here in Dallas. This is an abortion clinic that performs abortion up to 24 weeks right here in the Dallas area. He basically said this law is condescending to women, and basically he's quoted as saying there was a 19-year-old woman that came into his office recently for an afternoon visit. This woman basically wanted an abortion. She already had 2 children. And basically this woman said an abortion was the best choice for her. Well, no, the best choice for her was to stop having kids, or at least to get married. Something. You know, the best choice for her was to abstain from having sex. The best choice is not to get an abortion. But one of the things I want to talk about is, are we a better nation because of reproductive freedom in our society? 800-949-5973. And what do you think about this sonogram law? Do you think it's good that women have to get a sonogram before they can have this abortion procedure? Or do you think it's like this doctor, it's condescending, it's forcing somebody else's belief on a woman who's already decided what she wants to do with this unintended pregnancy or unwanted pregnancy? 800-949-5973. I want to know what you think about this new Texas law, especially if you're a woman who's decided to have an abortion in the past 2 or 3 weeks and you've experienced a situation when you've gone to abort your baby. I want to know what that experience was like for you. 800-949-5973. And I know this is a difficult subject, but I believe it's important that we talk about this. And when I've talked about this subject before, I've always put the disclaimer, if you will. We're not here to judge anyone. What we're here to do is to bring light to the situation and the consequences of what abortion has done to our society. And the fact that it has created this culture of death to where we have become so desensitized to death, we've become callous, if you will. Probably should have just said that word at the beginning, callous. We've become so callous to abortion or to pregnancy that it's treated as if it's right along with an STD in our society. And that's a sad state of affairs for a free nation, especially a nation that was based in Judeo-Christian principles. But are we better off because we've embraced Margaret Sanger? Margaret Sanger was the founder of Planned Parenthood. For those of you who don't know about the history of Planned Parenthood, she started it. She was the pioneer of it, of reproductive freedom for women. This woman was, you can go to my website. I posted on my Twitter account, on my Facebook account, a video of her actually back in, I believe it was 1957 with Mike Wallace. And the video is very telling about the mind of this woman. She's older at this point. She looks like she's maybe in her 60s or 70s. And just getting an idea of the mind of the woman who started this demonic, in my opinion, system of what the left calls abortion rights and what the right calls free murder. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Condoned or societal acceptance of murder. But I want you to hear real quick as we begin to go into this subject, and we're going to delve into it as quick as we can again. But I don't want any woman who's going through this procedure to hear me and think that I'm criticizing or judging you, because that's not the case. What I'm trying to do is bring light to the situation and help us to recognize how callous we've become as a culture to death. And again, are we better off since we've accepted Margaret Sanger's vision of reproductive freedom? I was looking at one scale, I believe it was done by the group lifenews.com. They posted on their website Planned Parenthood's numbers since abortion became legal in this nation. And you see it, they go all the way back to 1969 up through 1970s, 70s, and 80s, 90s. And you see back in 1969, 0 abortions. 10 years later, 1979, this is after Roe versus Wade, just 10 years, 1979, 67,000 abortions by Planned Parenthood, just Planned Parenthood. 10 years after Roe versus Wade. Okay, 1989, 122,000 abortions. 1999, 182,000 abortions. to 2009, Planned Parenthood alone, in the year 2009, 332,000 abortions. And I believe the most recent numbers we have for 2010, they did 324,000. Just Planned Parenthood alone. Has this type of reproductive freedom made us a better nation? 800-949-5973. Now that aborting a child is just another part of reproductive freedom, are we better? So in the last 40 some odd years, we've gone from, at least this organization, Planned Parenthood, having 0 abortions to now they are 300,000, well over 300,000 babies that are aborted every single year. And then even worse, it's even worse in the state of New York. This is the state that was the first one. I believe they had the first birth control clinic in New York. They were the first ones to legalize it. I posted on my blog and on my Facebook about, in New York, I believe it was in 2008, 40% of the pregnancies were ended. 40% of the pregnancies were ended in abortion. 4 out of 10 pregnancies were aborted in New York. And it's even worse for black Americans in New York. It's a staggering 60% of the babies, of the women who became pregnant in New York State alone. 60%. 6 out of 10 women, 6 out of 10 pregnancies were aborted. 6 out of 10. So you know what that means? What that means is, in New York State alone, as far as black women were concerned, there were more babies aborted than given birth. So you want to tell me we've become a better nation because we allow reproductive freedom? We allow women to go in and abort a baby just because it's inconvenient, it was unwanted, it was unexpected? You want to tell me we're a better nation because now we abort over 1 million babies a year, all under the guise of reproductive freedom? And it's even worse among teenage minorities in New York State. I believe it's somewhere around the high 70s. So we've gotten to the point to where Margaret Sanger's vision is being fulfilled. And when we come back, I'm going to play that clip from that video she had with Mike Wallace. But I want to know what you think. 800-949-5973. Are we better off because of this reproductive freedom? Or what do you think about the Texas abortion law? That they now have to have a sonogram and see what's going on inside their bodies before they abort their babies. Do you think that's good? Do you think that's bad? Do you think it's intrusive? 800-949-5973.
On Christian Talk Radio, The Word, 100.7 FM.
All right, we are back, and we're asking the question, are we a better nation because we've embraced Margaret Sanger's reproductive freedom vision in America? 800-949-5973. For those of you who don't know who Margaret Sanger is, she's the founder of Planned Parenthood. She actually started this whole birth control movement phenomenon that we're dealing with in our age today. The right of women to have an abortion. No matter what the situation is, it was in her mind. Obviously, there are so many things that we need to discuss on this. Let's go ahead. I want you to hear something. Those of you on hold, stay on hold. But we're going to be taking calls after this clip. But I want you to hear Margaret Sanger's idea of what she thinks sin is. And I find it very telling about this woman and how we deal with abortion and birth control in our society today. Go ahead, Dave.
And I suppose you just couldn't put that in a book, or you couldn't put it into a phrase or a sentence.
Do you believe in sin? When I say believe, I don't mean believe in committing sin. Do you believe there is such a thing as sin?
Well, I think the greatest sin in the world is bringing children into the world that have diseased from their parents, that have no chance in the world to be a human being, practically, delinquents, prisoners, all sorts of things just marked when they're born. That, to me, is the greatest sin that people can.
That's from the mind of Margaret Sanger in the 1957 interview she had with Mike Wallace on CBS. He asked her a pointed question. What is sin to you? She said sin is bringing a child into this world that's diseased, a prisoner, unfit. So, in her mind, and other quote-unquote elite liberals' minds, we control population by not allowing people who we deem unfit for society to reproduce. The greatest sin in the world to Margaret Sanger is to have these people. And then again, how do you know? No child is born as a prisoner. No child is born unfit. No child is born delinquent. No child is stamped delinquent when he or she is born. They're just a baby. Now, are there difficult and high-risk situations that they're born into? Yes. But no child is labeled. That's why I always argue with the term high-risk youth, because no child or youth is high risk. The environment they live in is high risk, not the youth. But you see how we've allowed liberalism and progressivism to change the way we think about our young people. This is why I say all the time, not only do liberals want to control your life from the cradle to the grave, but they want to try and stop your life before you're even born if they don't think you're going to be a positive contribution to society. 800-949-5973. So do you think we're a better nation because we've allowed this woman's vision to help dictate reproductive freedom in our society? Or what do you think about the Texas abortion law? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing that women have to get a sonogram? Do you think it's evasive? I want to know what you think. All right, let's go ahead and start taking some calls. 800-949-5973. Let's take Pamela first. Pamela, welcome to Conservatives Talk. Let me know what you are thinking.
Hey, brother. God bless you. As you were talking, I actually thought of something else I wanted to say. But first of all, I wanted to encourage you to check your numbers on the amount of abortions by Planned Parenthood, because I believe we're 53 million plus abortions in the country.
Oh, yeah,
since the Roe v. Wade.
Right,
so I believe Planned Parenthood has a much larger chunk than that.
Well, that number is in total, because Planned Parenthood, unfortunately, is not the only clinic that does it. But they have the most by far. They do about 300 some odd per year. But there are unfortunately
per year. You were saying per year.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Okay. I also wanted to say that it's kind of an oxymoron. It's kind of odd that pro-choice advocates would not want a pregnant mother to see a sonogram, and that they will fight so hard in the courts. Because the very ideal of to make a choice, what do you need? You need information.
Exactly.
So they're fighting against the mother getting information. So how can you so it's really not choice. It's just the word that they've labeled it, but it's not about choice. Because if it was about choice, then it would be about getting as much information as you can to that mom.
And you're exactly right, Pamela. I appreciate your call. Great points, by the way. You're exactly right, because it's not about choice. It's about control. Because what they want to do is, in the liberal mind, they believe they need to control population. Because they believe a huge population overburdens society. It causes poverty. It causes all these ills in society. So what do? We need to control it, especially those in poverty, those kids who are in situations where parents are deemed unfit, like you heard Margaret Sanger say. Those who may have a disease, a handicap. We don't want to produce these kind of babies in our society. So what it says is, let's control the population. That is one of the earmarks, or one of the pillars of liberalism and progressivism. And like you said, you're exactly right. They use that politically neutral word, choice, and they're really not about choice. They're about controlling our society. 800-949-5973. I want to know what you think. Do you think we've become a better nation because of Margaret Sanger's vision for our country of reproductive freedom? And what do you think about this abortion law in Texas now, where women have to get a sonogram before they have a baby and wait 24 hours? Do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing? Do you think it's evasive? Do you think it's too infringing on a woman's privacy? If she wants to just go and have an abortion, just let her have it. Stop putting all these barriers in front of her. I want to know what you think, whether you agree or not, especially if you've had an abortion in the last 3 or 4 weeks and you've experienced a situation in the clinic. 800-949-5973. Let's go back to the phones. Earl, welcome to Conservatives Talk. Let me know what you are thinking, sir.
Yeah, my simple idea was easy. Since all of these liberals want to have full control of everyone, and they want to be able to have abortions, let's let only the liberals have abortions. It'll only take us about 2 generations to be rid of them.
Well, that'd be great if they just wanted to control them, but they don't want to just control them. They want to control everybody, Earl, and that's where we have to make the changes. That's where we've got to begin to step up. Earl, appreciate your call. We've got to begin to step up and say, no, this type of vision, this type of ideology for our nation is not good. All you have to do is look at the facts. What has happened since we've allowed Roe versus Wade to become law in our society? Has it been good? Has it improved our nation? Has it improved our nation's health? Has it allowed women to be more cautious about their sexual behavior, and men? Excuse me, I don't want to put this all on women. Women and men to be more cautious about their sexual behavior. No, it hasn't. What it's done is it's allowed people to become more promiscuous, to be more sexually liberal, if you will, in society. See, that's what I'm saying. This is what liberalism does. It always masks itself under the ideology of this is going to help society. This is going to stop unintended pregnancies. More birth control, more access to contraceptions in our society is going to help us stop unwanted pregnancies. It's going to help us stop STDs. And all it does is increase it. And that's why I read to you earlier, according to one article cited by Life News, and these are numbers from the New York State Health Department. In 2008, like I said to you earlier, 40% of the pregnancies were ended in abortion in New York State. 40%. I mean, we can't even fathom that. 40%. So that's what, like I said earlier, 4 out of every 10 babies were aborted. And I know that wasn't because of rape or incest. It's because it was inconvenient. But I want you to hear something. This is the rough part about it. This is the most difficult part about it. This vision has been accepted. First, it was talked about in the halls of academia.
2 minutes.
This was promoted by so-called intellectuals of Margaret Sanger's day. And anybody who followed Margaret Sanger knew she operated something called, she started an initiative called the Negro Project, where she hired a few ignorant preachers because she knew who had the influence in black communities to go in and influence the black community to come in and start using these birth control methods in an effort to control the population in black communities, because black people were sprouting out all over the place in the latter half of the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century. There was a booming population. But yeah, they were in poverty. Unfortunately, a lot of it was because of Jim Crow laws and things like that. But she wanted to control these people, so she authored something called the Negro Project. And what's sad is now when I see so many people of color, especially black women, who advocate this ideology. We got to play for you before we go to break. I got to play earlier this week, The View, the women talked about this particular issue. They talked about the Texas abortion law and how it affected and how they were upset about it. And I want you to hear what one woman on The View, I believe her name is Sherry, I can't remember her last name, what she said about what she thought about this particular law. David, if we've had that up, let's go ahead and play it. I want you to hear what she said.
Have
babies. And then we say, we don't want you to have a baby. But then they don't have that abortion. They see the fetus, they feel guilty, they go back home. But we let you go. But we don't want you to go to Planned Parenthood to get any birth control, so you don't have any more. We want to defund it. Hold on one second, Barbara. But then, we want you to have the safety net of food stamps and welfare. Then we're the same ones that are going, you keep having these babies and you're not taking care of these babies. So, we stop at the picket signs and we don't help you pass that. So it's so difficult. And I'm speaking as a girl who had a lot of abortions. And I swear to God, if they had showed me a fetus, I probably wouldn't have. But I would have put my child in a lot of situations that wouldn't have been good because I didn't have the mental capacity to deal with having a child. If it was
Are you kidding me? See, this is what is tragic to me. And what's sad about it is what these women were doing. If you've seen the video, it's all over YouTube. Many people were talking about it last week. I have it posted on my Facebook. They were comforting her because she said she's had many abortions. She's had a lot of abortions. So this was her way of one method of birth control for this woman. Again, I'll find out her name once. She's on The View. This was her method of birth control, having a lot of abortions. And the reason? Because I didn't have the mental capacity to deal with a child. I could have all the sex I wanted, though. I didn't want to change my behavior. I didn't want to adjust anything about my lifestyle. But I wanted to have all the sex I want. And if I got in trouble, I can just run down to the local Planned Parenthood or clinic and just abort the child. Because now, as a woman, I've got reproductive freedom. And I can kill at will. Come on.
100.7 FM.
All right, we are back. Thank you for listening so much. We're talking about, are we a better off nation because of Margaret Sanger's vision of reproductive freedom in our nation? Are we better off because of it? Because now we abort annually over 1 million babies a year. Are we better off because we've aborted over 54 million babies since 1973? Are we better off? And I want to know what you think about the Texas abortion law that requires women now to have a sonogram before they abort their child. Well, a lot of people like this Dr. Curtis Boyd think it's condescending. They think it's not a good thing for women to see that because, again, they believe that it's a woman's choice, that she should be able to like this woman on The View, abort at will. Because, I don't have the mental capacity to have a baby right now. And see, this is what I'm talking about, people. Those of you who may be listening for the first time, and I know sometimes conservatives, when we talk about this issue, we get labeled as the moral police. We're in people's bedrooms. We're in their privacy. And the image of conservatism is always the proverbial old gray-haired white male guy, the Jerry Falwells or the Pat Robertsons. Well, I am neither. I'm not a gray-haired old white guy. But what I am is a guy who's experienced, like most of us, the cost and the negative consequences of bad behavior. I'm a guy who had a daughter out of wedlock when I was 23 years old, who thought about aborting her. Because I knew I wasn't in love with her mother. I knew I didn't want to be with her mother for the rest of my life. But because we were having, quote unquote, casual sex, back then, what they call it now is friends with benefits. Thank God now my wife is my true friend with benefits, which is the way it should be. But back then, I grew up in a society, especially in the 90s, where it was expected. I mean, the more women you had, it was like a notch on your belt in the late 80s and in the 90s. It's a sign of manhood. But see, they don't talk about the consequences of that type of behavior. Thank God I did not. I did not abort my daughter when I was 23. I didn't have the mental capacity to have a child. I had the mind of a 17-year-old when I was 23. Some may say even younger than that. Didn't have the mental capacity to have a child. But I knew that child wasn't at fault for my bad behavior. She was a consequence of it. And the easy way out would have been to just go down to a clinic and have it taken care of. And I came from a situation, people, where my father was a true Rolling Stone. I have half sisters and brothers all over the place. I have no true brothers and sisters, real brothers and sisters, where I didn't come from a family where I have a brother and sister who we have the same mother and the same father. The two brothers and sisters I grew up with are technically my half brother and sister. I'm the youngest of three that grew up in a house where my brothers and sisters, we all had three different fathers. So this dysfunction was acceptable in my family, and unfortunately many other black families and Hispanic families and some white families. So I was going down this same road as well as my father, being involved sexually with all type of women, thinking this proved my manhood. And the result of that is, again, I had a child and I had a decision to make. And like I told you, I was in no way ready to have a child. But thank God, through his grace and mercy, even in the mistake that me and my daughter's mother made, we decided to go and have the baby. Because the child wasn't at fault. Now, through a series of events, thank God, what it did for me was it matured me. It caused me to realize that my actions had consequences. Because as long as I kept getting in the bed and getting out of the bed with a woman and it had no consequences for my actions, you keep doing the same behavior. I kept doing the same thing because there was no consequence. I didn't care about the women. It was about selfishness. It was about me doing what I wanted to do. And because there was no consequence, because life, the culture I lived in said this was cool, this is what a young man in his late teens and early 20s was supposed to be doing with no consequence, I kept doing it. But once a baby showed up, and once I got that call from my daughter's mother saying, I'm pregnant, once I got over the shock of that and realization of that and what that meant, I realized I can't abort this child. And I'm so glad I didn't. Was it a struggle? You betcha. And for most of her life, I had to raise her by myself. Was that a struggle? You bet it was. I had no idea how to raise a young girl. But every day I looked at her, I was so glad. Every time I went into her bedroom and kissed her goodnight, every time I held her in my arms, I was so glad I did not abort this child. See, this is what I'm saying, people. We've got to get away from this selfish behavior. What had to change was my behavior.
2 minutes.
The choice I had to make was not a choice of whether I would abort or not. The choice was whether I would keep having unsolicited sex outside of marriage. That was the choice I needed to make. Was I going to keep up with this type of behavior? But see, we've got it all wrong in our society. We don't want to change our behavior. We just want to change the consequences of our behavior. We don't want to have the negative consequences. And that's why we have the results that we have. That's why Planned Parenthood alone is now today aborting over 300,000 babies. That's why today we have over 54 million babies that have been aborted over the past 40 years because we have been selfish and we have not wanted to change our behavior. Those are just the facts. And the reason why I'm saying is, like I told you, I'm not some old guy sitting up here condemning you, telling you what you were doing is wrong. I know. I've been there. I know the hard choice. I know what it feels like to get that call as a man. I can't speak as a woman. But as a man, to hear from a woman, I'm pregnant, knowing I am nowhere near in the position to handle a child. But thank God, not because of who I am, but because of who he is, we made the decision to do it. And it caused me, like I said, to mature and begin to change my behavior. Did I get it all right after that? No. I would wish I could have said I did. I did not. But I began to mature afterwards with my decisions, especially about sexual behavior. 800-949-5973. We'll be taking more of your calls when we come right back. I just wanted to give you a little bit of my story because sometimes I know this is rough and it sounds like I'm being condemning and judgmental. I'm not. Because I understand what it's like. All right, we're back and we're talking about Are we a better nation? Are we better off because we have embraced Margaret Sanger's view of reproductive freedom? One of the places I think, like I said, we offer alternatives and solutions here, and one of those groups that I think is a solution, one of those organizations is a solution to this type of, to Planned Parenthood and other organizations like that out there, is the Heidi Group. I've had the founder on my show before, Ms. Carol Everett. Great woman, great work that she does. She's helping women. I mean, you can go to her website. It's heidigroup.org, HEIDIGROUP, HEIDIGROUP.org, heidigroup.org. If you're a pregnant young lady or a person who's in a situation you don't know what to do, Google it. They can help you find out what you need to do, the next step. There are other ways instead of just the convenience of abortion. There are so many other ways. Again, that's the heidigroup.org. Go. They're on my Facebook page. They're on my Twitter page. They are there. They can help you find out somebody here, somebody in this local area. I believe they're based out of Austin, but they can help you find out where you can find somebody you can get in contact with to help you in your situation. Because we've got to change the trajectory in our society from this culture of death to where it's so easy. Unfortunately, where we have people in the media, like this woman on The View, who said just callously, I mean, just nonchalantly, I've had a lot of abortions, like it's nothing in our society. And then to have compassion doled upon her as if she was the one who went through the rough time. And then to say the reason for it is because I just didn't have the mental capacity for it. We've got to be a better nation than that. Thank God for the legislatures in the state of Texas who ruled for this, who passed laws for this, to make a woman stop and think about what she's doing so that we understand the actions that we do have consequences. Because if all we do is think, well, it's okay, I can do whatever I want, there's no consequences, we will not change our behavior. And that's the choice that needs to be made. The choice in our sexual behavior. Not the choice in whether we're going to abort a baby or not, or whether it's easy to go do it or not. Thank God Texas's abortion rate is nowhere near that of the New York State. I believe ours is around 15 or 16%, but it's still too high. Still too high. We've got to begin to change the culture. And that's what I'm saying. This is what this is all about. Find out. Contact groups like the Heidi Group. Begin to change your behavior. Realize that you're a better person than that. You don't have to keep sleeping around, whether you're a boy or a girl, young woman or young man. It's difficult. Of course it is. You're talking to somebody who because I didn't want to become have multiple children for multiple women, I have made a decision that I was going to remain abstinent until I got married again. After my first child, like I was talking to you before the break, she was 2. I married a woman that I shouldn't have married with. That's why I told you I kept making some stupid mistakes because I was in my 20s. I was stupid. But after we shouldn't have got married, got a divorce. But I made a decision that I was going to, by the help of God, I was going to remain abstinent until I got married again because I didn't want to be in situations where I could potentially have another baby out of wedlock. Now, did I know it was going to be 8 years later before I got married? God, no, I did not. Jesus. If somebody had told me when I made this commitment to God and myself in 2000 and I wasn't going to get married until 2008, I may have not made that commitment. I'm just being honest. But by the grace of God, I did. And I kept the commitment till I met my beautiful wife. I changed my behavior. Now, society says I was well within my means to go out and have as much sex as I want. I'm an adult. I'm healthy. Everything is fine. You have every right to go out there and just have as much sex as you want. You're single. You're not married. But I chose to operate at a higher law. I wanted to wait till I got married. I didn't want to repeat the sins of my father. And I broke that cycle. I broke it. Thank God now I have 2 more children within the confines of my lovely marriage with my lovely wife now. 2 more beautiful children that are just awesome. And every day me and my wife look at them, we say, thank God. And I thank God that I don't have 4 or 5 other women calling my house, talking to my wife, saying, where's Donald? He hasn't paid child support. Where's he? Whatever. Thank God. And I don't have to go to court about 4 or 5 different women because I have 4 or 5 different children because I've had all these children out of wedlock. So what happened? Like I said, I changed my behavior. I decided I wasn't going to have sex because I didn't want to get involved, to have the chance of having another baby out of wedlock. Was it difficult? You betcha, like I said, but it was well worth it. It was well worth it. That now I'm raising my 2 children with my wife. I'm not doing it alone like I was with my first child. I have my wife with me to help me with my son and my daughter, which is the way God intended it to be, and which is the best way for the children. This is what I'm talking about, people. We've got to begin to put the onus on ourselves, not put the onus on a child. It's not their fault that your behavior caused them to come into being. Let's put the onus on us. Let's put the discipline on us. Let's make us deal with the consequences. Make the right choice before we get there.